What's up guys, it's your host Spartanic Arts DxD back with another high school DxD related video, or What If Issei Was Betrayed Part 8. I can't thank you enough for 13,000 subscribers as we are currently, or at the time that I'm recording this video, which is this September 30th. So thank you for all the support, and without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. Chapter 23, Dawn of War, the finale. If anyone were to be in the area of the battlefield, they would see a large purple and black dragon flying backwards, knocking up and unrooting trees as it traveled backwards. The world was going to be changed very soon. It all started with that moment. Nothing would be the same. Never again. Way to start it, Issei, Kokaville chuckled. Issei shrugged and spoke up. Well, that should get their attention, he said loudly. Kokaville was about to speak again, but something interrupted him. Everyone turned towards the sound of a roar, coming from where Tanin was. It seemed he wasn't done. Persistent, huh? Very well. I'll show you just who you're facing, Issei thought with determination. Everyone looked towards Issei as he walked forwards, waiting for Tanin to come back. Everyone saw this and started to step back. They knew that Issei was going to prove a point, and usually that meant he was going to use something powerful. As Tanin hovered above the group, he spoke in a deep voice. You are very powerful, yes, but I will be damned if I gave up that easily. I will not stop until I'm dead, Tanin shouted loudly. Issei shook his head and sighed. It seemed that was the only way. Very well, he said to himself. So that is what has to happen. Have you made your peace? Issei said loudly. Everyone, even Tanin, wondered what he meant. Where Tanin didn't respond, Issei sighed, then began to speak yet again. You have chosen your side in this war. You said that you will not stop until death. I asked if you made your peace because death is what you will get, Issei said loudly. Tanin narrowed his eyes, then chuckled. You are a very generous person when you need to be, Issei hyoudou. You have said your warning, and I accept it. It is a fight to the death then, Tanin roared. Issei shook his head and then grinned. Very well. If it is a fight to the death you want, then a fight to the death you will get, he roared loudly. Tanin nodded. He knew something was coming. Suddenly, Tanin roared and spat out a turret of flames towards the group. Everyone got on the defensive and ready to fight back, but they stopped when Issei rose his hand. Everyone felt the pressure increase tenfold as Issei started to power up. He held out his hand and the sphere of annihilation started to form. However, he clenched his fist around it and suddenly it launched a blast of the volatile energy towards the flames. The flames were no match. They were devoured by Issei's attacks. It was no use. Tanin was hopelessly outmatched, but his pride blinded him from just seeing that. It seemed Issei would have to force him to see that. Tanin suddenly dove at high speeds towards Issei. Issei saw this as motion for everyone to scatter. Tanin's attack would no doubt cause some damage, and he couldn't dodge it either. As Tanin neared Issei, he prepared himself. Welch Dragon, Annihilation Balance Breaker. The call was heard. The same glow everyone in Issei's group had seen before had blinded them while Issei went into his balance breaker. Boost times 3, the gauntlet called out. As Tanin neared him, Issei held out his hands and forwards. As Tanin finally crashed into Issei, he tried to push back with as much force as he could muster. But the velocity of which Tanin charged was a little much. However, he wasn't afraid. It could be a day in hell if he was afraid. Boost times 5, the gauntlet called out yet again. Issei pivoted quickly while holding on to Tanin and spun around and threw the dragon towards the tree. The crashing sound of Tanin was loud enough for everyone to hear, but it was obvious Tanin wasn't done yet. No, the sound of his enraged roar made it very clear to everyone there. Tanin charged once again towards Issei, clawing and swiping at him at every chance he could get. However, Issei just dodged and dodged. He was just too fast for Tanin to land a successful hit. However, Tanin wouldn't relent, not at all. Issei saw this, and he knew it was time to end it once and for all. Boost times 5, the gauntlet called out again. Everyone wondered what he was doing. He could easily put Tanin out of commission, but it seemed that Issei was trying to prove a point. Blade! Everyone heard it loud and clear. Tanin knew what the sword was, and he eyed it warily. He knew now that Issei is going to fulfill his promise of a fight to the death. Issei vanished in a burst of speed. Tanin didn't see him move at all. He suddenly gasped out in pain as he felt the blade connect against his shoulder. Issei followed it up with a high-powered kick that sent Tanin flying yet again. You choose your side, and I have chose mine, Tanin. This is the end, Issei shouted loudly. Tanin's eyes widened as he looked at his opponent. He was utterly foolish to try to fight Issei. If he wanted to live, he needed to escape, but how? That was the question that was was running through his head. That's when something popped into his head. Issei stopped as Tanin stood up. He thought for a second that he wasn't done, but something in his gut told him different. That's when Tanin let out a gigantic breath of fire in a 360-degree motion. All the trees started to go up in flames, and smoke was making it very hard to see. Issei knew now what he was doing. Shit, he quickly thought. He charged into the smoking, trying to put Tanin out before he could escape. However, it was already too late. He didn't feel his presence anymore, or his energy. Issei roared with anger as a burst of energy erupted around him, clearing away the smoke. Tanin escaped. Shit, Issei screamed. Everyone walked forwards as Issei started to calm down. He escaped? So what? Don't see, asked curiously. Issei looked up for a moment. We train. Tanin escaping will only hasten the factions coming. I expect it to fully start in a day or two, he said loudly. Folly had a question suddenly, so she started to speak up. What are we going to do for shelter? The area isn't big enough for us all to go to sleep and stay for the next few weeks as the war continues to go on, she said loudly. Issei took a moment to look at her. I agree with you on that. So, we will use the Gremory estate. It's the best thing we can do. So we have to make do with what we have, he said loudly. Everyone nodded at that, and before they knew it, they were outside the Gremory estate for a day to train. So what we will be doing, Kokaville asked curiously. Issei thought about it for a moment. They had been training for quite some time, and Issei knew they were ready. However, more training couldn't hurt. That's when he got an idea. For today, we will do this in two parts. One group will face me today in a spar, and tomorrow the other group will face me, he said loudly. Everyone listened and as he began to speak yet again. Today's group will be Kokaville, Kalawarner, Kuroka, Taimat, and Byoko, he said loudly. Everyone was surprised he was going to face off against 5 of them. However, they knew better. He had something in mind to counter just that. They would have to just wait and see. The 5 of them nodded and stepped up. Issei looked at him for a moment. Kokaville, Taimat, and Kuroka would be a tough matchup. And to add, the other 2 would be even more against him, and he knew that they were very good. Suddenly, Kokaville summoned a large light spear and charged at Issei. He was fast, no doubt. However, Issei was faster. As Issei went to counter Kokaville, an energy blast came from Kuroka. Taimat was in her dragon form. Spraying fire around him, they were trying to corner him right off the bat. That was smart, no doubt. It seemed they were using teamwork against him. Byoko and Kalawarner were staying back for a bit. It seemed they were waiting for an opportunity. Issei saw this and smirked. This made it a lot easier for him. Boosted gear, everyone heard. Before their very eyes, Issei had summoned his sacred gear. They knew now if he was starting off with his sacred gear, then that meant he planned to push them to the edge of their limits. As Kokaville neared Issei, he knew he needed to get him back quickly before the others joined. Blade! Everyone knew what was coming. Issei instantly put up Ascalon to block as Kokaville struck with his spear. Issei put a lot of force as he started to push down on Kokaville's spear. Suddenly the spear shattered as it was too much. Issei gave a bloodthirsty grin in one that Kokaville knew all too well. Kokaville let out a gasp of breath for Issei elbowed him in the solar plex. Issei followed up with a powerful kick that sent Kokaville flying backwards. Taimat saw this and decided to dive down towards Issei and instantly transform out of her dragon form. Kokaville would no doubt be down for a bit, but Issei knew that a warmonger would be back for more. Byoko stepped up as Kuroka did as well. Byoko held his staff ready in his hand as Kuroka started preparing Senjutsu. It was now a 3v1, with Kalawarner still waiting and Kokaville down for a bit. Byoko suddenly dashed in a burst of speed. Issei's eyes widened. Byoko was a lot faster than he let on. That was a problem, and Issei knew what he needed to be careful around him. Sure, Issei was faster, but Byoko no doubt would be creative and would keep his tricks up his sleeve. Suddenly, Byoko vanished in a burst of smoke. That's when Issei felt his movement restricted. He looked down to see a snake wrap around him. Shit, I forgot, he has the ability to shapeshift, Issei thought quickly. The situation was getting worse now. With his movements restricted, he wouldn't be able to defend against them properly. He had an idea, but he knew it would damage Byoko quite a bit. However, this was nothing compared to what they would face in the oncoming weeks. Suddenly, Issei's energy skyrocketed. The snake Byoko was transformed into started to turn real dark. Issei's volatile energy started to burn Byoko. The snake slithered off and poof of smoke happened, revealing Byoko with large burns. Fortunately, he was still breathing. Issei knew that he could take him out for a good bit. The others looked a little wary at Boku. They knew now he was serious to do whatever it took to close the situation. Kuroka suddenly started to glow up purple and a magic circle appeared behind her. Issei knew that what was coming. Welch Dragon, Annihilation Balance Breaker. Everyone heard. Before their eyes, Issei was powered up and ready. Kalawarner decided to step forwards. It seemed that this sparring session would be a little longer than Issei thought. However, once again it was time to fight. Suddenly, Kuroka launched several energy blasts while Taimat dove downwards while spraying a large breath of fire. Kalawarner stood ready, waiting for the opportunity to strike. Issei instantly took to the skies. He knew what to do. As everyone watched him hover in the skies, They wondered what he was going to do. Suddenly, the boosted gear on his arm started to form a red sphere above it. Everyone knew what was coming, and his powers, and it would be magnificently in its power. Dragon Shot. Everyone scattered as the blast rained down towards the ground. However, a few of them didn't have enough time to get out of his way. Kuroka managed to put a shield around her, but the blast was too powerful, leaving her energy exhausted and barely any left in the tank. Kalawarnu took it the most, and the blast had sent her flying into a tree, instantly knocking her unconscious. Taimat landed in front of Issei as Kokaville finally stood back up. The sparring session was coming to a close. It seemed that Kokaville and Taimat were going to try to finish it by themselves. They just have to see how much damage they could dish out before they inevitably lost. They knew it too. But they'd be damned if they didn't try. Issei saw their determination and grinned and gave them the motion to come at him. They did just that. As Kokaville charged with a light spear in his hand, he knew he was already exhausted and wouldn't last much longer, but there was still no reason to not give it his all. Taimat felt the same way too. They knew they were facing an impossible opponent, but yet they tried. That Issei was all they wanted to see, and he saw enough of it in this fight. However, they made it very clear they weren't done. Issei didn't have a problem with that either. Issei quickly grabbed Kokaville's arm that was aiming for him and it twirled around him and launched him high in the air. Taimat was the only one left. However, she got a sinking feeling in her gut, telling her to surrender now. However, her dragon's pride took control as she charged at Issei's head on. Issei only smirked and released his wings. Boost! Everyone heard. Issei dashed towards Taimat and grabbed a hold of her and took her to the skies. Kokaville was starting to fall already. As Issei started to hover above the area, he looked at Kokaville falling down, barely conscious. He knew with the coming next, both of them would be unconscious. Taimat's eyes widened as Issei started to spin like crazy, then launched her down towards the ground, in exact path of Kokaville too. She knew what he did. It was too late. She couldn't correct her path, and it was obvious that Issei was ready for more if he needed. As Taimat connected with Kokaville's body, she knew there was a lot of pain coming. A blast of dust erupted and two of them collided with the ground at high speeds. The sparring session was over, and it was obvious to everyone. Issei was serious, and he would push them to their limits, whether they liked it or not. Chapter 24, Slaughterhouse, Part 1. The group that was up next was Issei was Ina, Arthur, Volley, Rainier, and Donaseek. Lefay didn't want to participate. She said that she wanted to conserve her strength for what's to come. Issei had no problem with it either, so he let her watch from the sidelines like the other group who he faced previously. However, something in Issei's mind was nagging him. It was early quiet for the day, and whatever that case was, that usually meant something was on the horizon. He was right too. If he only knew. He stopped the sparring session and have everyone prepare for battle. He didn't even get to say anything to his friends, as they charged in with no hesitation, except for Rainier. Issei instantly knew she was starting off with a ranged approach, and that meant he needed to watch closely. If he were to slip up, they could easily get him in with some support. Donaseek instantly tried to slash downwards at him with his axe, however, Issei casually sidestepped it. As he whipped his head around the gate to gauge what the others were doing, they were all about to strike him. He knew time was key here. If he tried to counter at all, most likely would still get hit by a few of them, so he needed to create some distance and rethink his strategy. Without a second to spare, he unfolded his wings and used them like a shield, like the dome of some sorts. It was the best he could think of with what little time he had. As he felt them connect with the wings, he spread them as wide as they could, knocking them back a good couple of feet. He quickly leapt into the air. That's when Rainier threw a light spear as Issei summoned Ascalon and deflected it easily. However, he knew now that they weren't stopping until they had won. His mind instantly went to work and started picking apart the group. His plan was simple: take them out one and start with Rainier. He wasn't going to hurt her much, just get her to quit on her own will. Then he would deal with the rest of them. He wasn't going to waste any time. Everyone he faced that instantly saw him summon the boosted gear. Boost! Everyone heard loudly. He dashed in, but she decided she was going to charge in as well. Issei quickly blocked as Rainier struck her with a light spear. That's when Arthur dashed in quickly. Issei had no choice but to back away. Arthur had a sharp eye and would give a good fight. He needed to do enough damage one by one and hopefully get someone to start to feel fatigue, and he could take advantage of the opportunity. But he wasn't going lightly on all of them. That was the reason Great Red wasn't fighting. A clash of those proportions would only spell trouble. As soon as Donaseek started to approach along with Arthur, with Volley and Ariana backing him up, he knew he would have no choice. A little shift in power was needed, and they would just see what he's made of. Arthur's instincts told him to run as soon as he saw the dark energy he heard that Issei gained in the fight with Great Red. He felt Issei's energy flare up as soon as he coated his fist with it. His only choice was to leap away as Issei tried to pounce on him, his fist crashing into the ground as he missed Arthur. The ground itself cracked and formed a small crater with the sheer force that was backing up the punch. Issei wasn't giving up either. He was going after Arthur and making sure he got him out while the others were distracted. Arthur's position and timing were impeccable. Arthur barely had any time to dodge as Issei dashed in swiftly. He didn't see it coming as Issei instantly delivered a kick to his ribs and sent him flying. Issei held back, and thankfully he did. He powered a kick that would be damaging, but anything he crashes into the world would do more damage. But that was the point. Arthur would be out for a while, and if he managed to pull it back together, he would be weakened. Issei looked at Volley and knew what was coming. He quickly blocked a punch from Volley, but that wasn't good enough. As he saw a grin, Issei instantly prepared for what was coming. Divide! Issei heard Albion's voice come from the wings on her back. Issei felt a slight jan in his energy. He knew Volley wasn't going down without a fight. She was his rival, and her strength and willpower would prove it. However, Issei's new strength was something else. That's why when everything started, his true power would be for one to all to see. As Issei regained his bearings, he noticed Donaseek closing in again. However, his focus was now on Volley. Issei charged at Volley with Donaseek following closely behind him. As Donaseek finally caught up, he tried to strike at him. However, Issei was waiting. With a swift motion, he ducked under him and elbowed him in the gut. Donaseek had no time to see what was coming. Issei had already begun to grab his arm and toss him over his shoulder. Volley quickly backed up as Donaseek was smashed into the ground. Issei didn't wait around and jumped towards Volley to start on her. Volley definitely looked ready. Issei didn't hesitate and quickly leapt into action. Volley barely had any time to put her guard up as Issei came in hard and fast. As Issei's fist connected with Volley's arm, he tried to follow it up with a kick to some ribs. However, Volley managed to jump back just in time. That was when Issei stopped. He was obviously concentrating on something, but what? That was the question that was in everyone's mind, and they were going to need an answer. Volley was the first one to speak up. Issei, what's going on? Why'd you stop? She asked. Issei turned his head toward her and prepared for what he was going to say. We got company, was all he said. That was all that needed to be said. An instant, everyone's attitude was serious. Who and where? The others asked when they approached. Issei looked over to see where he could feel his power source. There were a few of them. He had no idea who they were, but their energy levels were off the charts. Whoever they are strong, and there's more than one person. It seems that the time has come. Are you ready, my friends? Issei asked at the end, and his response was obvious. Issei was too proud to look at the determination on their faces. It was time to go to work. As soon as Issei turned around, he closed his eye again. They were coming towards them, but before he knew it, two figures appeared and they started walking towards the group. Issei was practically on guard the moment he sensed him. He dared them to try to say anything. He wasn't waiting around either. Who are you guys? He asked loudly. Both of them were strangers, as he could tell they were very powerful. However, it wouldn't do them any good. His thought process was disrupted as one of them started to speak. So this is the kid that's starting the war, brother, the voice was hardened. It was obvious they were siblings. Yes, the brother of one that spoke looked at the sibling and spoke in harsh, condescending tone. Yes, Thor. However, we aren't here to talk. We have orders we need to complete, he said. Thor then looked at Issei and started to speak. My brother Loki is right, Issei hyoudou. Me and you shall fight. Show him your true strength, Red Dragon Emperor, Thor said loudly. Issei looked at him sharply. Thor, the Norse god of thunder. Why send him and Loki first? They're both no pushover. They came in at the wrong time, though. We may have been sparring, but the last group is almost recovered. Red is around too. I know he's coming already. Issei's thoughts started going into overdrive. Before he knew it, the dragon was just thinking about appeared through a portal. His face was hardened and ready to destroy his enemies. Who is this dragon? Another new one of the group? Thor asked quickly. Issei looked about ready to speak up. But then Red took the opportunity for himself. Me? I'm sure you heard of me, Asgardian. You may call me Red. However, you should know that I'm not the only one to go toe-to-toe with my friend at my side. While he was at a higher power than even I. Should you think you have any chance at all against him? You're wrong, and you should thought about that but fighting a guy who fought Great Red to a near standstill, he said with a smirk. Thor's eyes narrowed as he heard what Red said. He wasn't giving up that easily. He looked at Great Red and spoke. Apocalyptic dragon. It is my brother Loki you will fight. I'm here for your partner and nothing more, he said stronger. Red shook his head as he spoke anyways. All right, well, I warned you. However, this road you're both going down is one-way ticket to a beatdown, he said loudly. Loki, who was silent for the most part, decided to push his 2 cents in. "Shut it, you impudent fool. You shouldn't take me too lightly. I'm a god after all," he said. It was short and sweet. Issei looked at the god for a moment. "You are the one who is sorely mistaken. We are dragons of such power you wouldn't realize it until it was all an all-out fight. You have come to your graves, Norse gods." Loki snorted and glared at Issei. "You little brat. I will enjoy watching my brother beat you into a bloody pulp," he screamed. Issei shook his head. He was honestly getting tired of this. "Save it, brother. We need to complete our mission," Thor said suddenly. Loki looked like he wanted to retaliate at his brother, but he decided against it. They were about to face high-level warriors with some serious abilities. However, unfortunately for them, Issei's patience was running thin. Too thin. In fact, he was not about to wait around anymore. Either come with all you got or don't come at all. Great Red was about to speak but looked over at Issei, who was eerily silent, which usually meant something was wrong. Obviously, Issei was deadly serious now. Issei looked at the dragon as he faced a little while ago and spoke. "Red, you have my permission to do anything you can think of to defeat Loki. As for you, Thor, I have no more patience for this. I'm done giving warnings. My friend may have warned you, however, you still will fight me with determined eyes. I don't know if you accepted your death or not, but your end is coming, Thor. No more games. Fight like you mean it, because I am," he said loudly. As he said that, everyone felt the pressure kick in as Issei decided to partially transform into a dragon. It started to increase as his tail formed, both his hands turned rugged and had sharp claws protruding from his hands. There was no doubt whatsoever he was serious. Issei had been training a bit with his newfound powers, and he had found out he could use his power in multiple ways. He had found that through partially transforming, his strength and speed was increased, allowing him to be more agile. His semi-transformed state also allowed his tail and claws, which in fight were deadly weapons if he used right. The backdraw was that he couldn't use his sacred gears, but the fact that he increased speed and strength in this form, it would no doubt be a good form for fighting. He hadn't really tested it out on anyone in a fight yet, since this was a form to be used in a true battle. Thor had zero time to think of what to do before Issei launched himself towards the Asgardian, easily landing a powerful blow that sent Thor flying backwards out of the area. Red caught a glimpse of Issei launching himself towards Thor with no hesitation and some quick speed. As he looked at Loki, it was obvious to him. It was go time. Loki instantly looked at Red, who started dodging as Loki started firing energy blast at him. Loki didn't hit him in any way of shots fired. Red suddenly disappeared. Loki looked all around, but he couldn't find him at all. However, he could sense his energy all over the place. He was here, but he wasn't able to see him. Suddenly, he heard something behind him. He turned to see a portal opening. He quickly lifted his hand and saw an energy blast connected with a magic circle that he could use to block the attack. Red, however, was nowhere to be seen. Loki once again turned around. He was completely gone. He needed to figure out what he was doing and fast before Red seized an opportunity. Sadly, Loki didn't realize it was already too late. Before he knew it, Red had already jumped out of the portal, soaring towards Loki at great speeds. As he turned around to see what was going on, he already lifted up and carried high into the air. Loki tried to break the hold Red had on him. However, Red's physical strength was way too much for Loki to overcome. He had to think of something quickly, but once again it was too late. Red started to spin Loki violently and hurled him down to the ground with a ton of force. Everyone cringed as Loki crashed violently into the ground. They all watched as Red landed back down on the ground, looking like it was nothing for him. In fact, he had a shit-eating grin on his face. It was like he was having fun tormenting Loki. However, his grin quickly was replaced with a serious expression as soon as he felt Loki's energy skyrocket. He was too late, and his reaction was hit with a gigantic energy blast that sent him flying backwards. The rest of the group knew Red wasn't done for, and he wouldn't be done for a while. Loki looked like he was about to celebrate, but he was cut off. "By your expression, you probably thought you've won the fight. Too much pride you have, Asgardian. To think you could finish me off with that easily was foolish. And now it is time for me to get serious, as it seems you are as well," he said loudly. Red's energy exploded as he said that. Loki watched with horror as his energy concentrated around him and then started to brighten as it was glowing more and more potent. As the light finally died down, he gulped at what he saw. Red had used his energy to create an ethereal doppelganger. It was pretty much just like the original, except for the fact that he could see just a bit through it. He barely had time as both of them charged simultaneously. Loki had a few ideas of what to do, but he had to be careful now. It was a 2-on-1, but both of them were weaker than before. Loki knew it was some type of illusion magic that he was using to allow him to do that. His doppelganger would most likely have most of his abilities, if not all of them. It's just its power, though, wouldn't be that bad, due to the fact it was created from the original's power, so he had chosen to go on the defensive first and get some distance. As the two of them close in, a magic circle appeared under Loki, who had a large grin. A large explosion knocked Red and his doppelganger back. Red looked at his doppelganger as he recovered from Loki's attack. He ordered his doppelganger to change tactics. It was time to take this to the next level. Loki would need to be ready to keep going. Before Loki knew it, the doppelganger dashed towards and close to him. Red took to the skies and began swiping at Loki while the doppelganger attacked on the ground. Loki had no idea what to do. His power was something else, especially to deploy a tactic like that. If you cover both of the ground and air, that gave you a large advantage. He managed to block power packed from first doppelganger, but suddenly he felt a crushing blow to his back. Red used that moment he was distracted and crashed into him with a lot of force. The blow sent Loki tumbling to the ground. As Loki got back up, he seriously needed to rethink his situation. It was turning more and more sour as time raged forwards. If he didn't do something quickly, it would be over and it would be all for nothing. That's when he decided it was time to go all in. Either go all out or go home indeed. Red was surprised when Loki's energy started to rise once again. However, this time it was different. This energy was the equivalent to what a god's power should be. Loki was using every ounce of power he had in his veins in order to have a chance in this fight. Red grinned widely. Loki, Norse god of mischief, to put this much effort in a fight, you have shown me your resolve, and it will continue to forwards through that fire that is laid out for you. For this you have my respect, but no, nothing you do will matter anyways, he said loudly. Loki didn't hesitate and disappeared from Red's vision. Red smirked as he knew this wouldn't be effective. There was a few ways he could find him with a bit of creative thinking. He really didn't know Loki's ability worked. He knew there was ways to beat it. So he was about to try out a few different things. First thing he did was absorb the doppelganger to get his power back from it. He was going to need it for what he was going to be doing. That's when he sent out an energy wave. It was completely circular, the wave that expanded as it traveled further away from Red. It was harmless and wouldn't hurt anything. However, that wasn't what it was for. Then the wave collided with a different energy. Red would be able to sense it. That's when he noticed a small trace of energy a little above him, and he looked around it and smirked. Found you, Red thought quickly. Now with that small trace of energy, he could try to pinpoint what Loki would do next. Even though it was very small, he could do something about it. He could force Loki to use more, thus making him exposed. However, Red's train of thought was abruptly stopped as several light blue energy waves appeared around in thin air. That was a mistake on Loki's part. Even though Loki was trying to use a confused Red with all the energy blasts, Red was able to find the source. He took with breathtaking speeds, faster than anyone could tell. As he soared towards his destination, he heard his fist ready to go with a lot of energy packed into it. When he threw the punch, it was surprised to felt it connected, so Loki was just using camouflage and not some dimension warping ability that Red was using. As he saw a gigantic crater from what was pretty much a span of a few seconds, he knew where it was. That's when Red landed by the crater. Loki looked up in horror as Red started to form a gigantic amount of energy it condensed into his hand. It seemed this was the end. There was nothing left he could really do. However, he wasn't about to go down without a fight. No, that would be counteraddictive to what it showed and show he didn't have what it took. When Red fired off the energy, Loki poured every ounce of the power he had into a magic circle that got hit with Red's attack. As the two energies fought for dominance, it seemed like a stalemate. However, that was far from the case. Red smirked and lifted his hand, forming another energy wave. He launched it ferocity towards his already struggling attack to support it. Loki was done for. As the two attacks combined, Loki's circle wasn't able to handle it. It shattered completely, and Loki watched with horror as Red's attack was nearing him at a very quick pace. It was the end and he knew it. That's when the attack hit him. The resulting explosion that was set off could be heard and seen for miles. They didn't believe it yet, now they did. Issei Group was not playing around. The end was coming. Chapter 25. Slaughterhouse Finale. As the group saw the mushroom cloud high above in the air, they knew Loki wasn't coming back from that. It was a ton stronger than what a human's atomic bomb could produce. The energy that rolled off in waves was catastrophic, destroying anything that came into contact with it as it raged onwards. Eventually, the blast died down, but the Red was nowhere to be seen. Suddenly, a portal opened next to them and outstepped the one and only person they were looking for. You warped to the gap before the last blast went off to avoid damage, didn't you? Kogathil asked suddenly. He nodded, then everyone looked to where his eyes were, in the direction of where Issei launched Thor. "So how do you think Thor will fare?" Volley asked him. He didn't even turn to her. His attention was completely focused on the forest that was distance away. Thor better heed my and Issei's warning, because if he doesn't, he's as good as dead. Issei is deadly serious. We're most likely going to see him use his abilities to the fullest during this war. His power truly is and will be recognized as the force to be reckoned with by the end of this. They all heard him. They all knew it would be him to show up to who had abandoned him. They knew it would be to him to show up everyone who had abandoned him. Scene break. Now we're with Issei fighting Thor. Thor barely had enough time to regain his bearings as he felt the incredible amount of energy of his opponent coming towards him in leaps and bounds. As Issei finally appeared, Thor put up his guard as he was struck with a power-packed fist. He felt the energy behind the blow, and he knew this was a serious situation. The opponent was not to be taken lightly lest he would die. Issei quickly dodged Thor as he tried to strike him with his hammer. Thor wasn't quitting though. He kept pressing on, trying to get whatever he could. That's when Issei felt the hammer hit his stomach and was skidding backwards. He groaned as he felt the power behind the hammer. His thoughts were cut off as Thor started to spin his hammer wildly. Issei quickly rolled out of the way of the hammer and was sent flying with the electric aura. He watched as it smashed into the tree behind him, completely obliterating it. Issei took that moment. Since Thor didn't have his weapon back yet and charged with blinding speeds, Thor quickly felt a hook to the jaw and barely had time to register what was going on as Issei followed up with a hard uppercut. In turn, Issei used his tail to grab Thor and throw him forcefully into a tree. Thor got the wind knocked out of him as he hit the trunk very fast and with a lot of force. Thor was honestly able to get right back up, and Issei knew that this fight was going to be a long one. He was a god after all, but Issei wasn't going to let anything stop him from reaching his goal. Thor quickly realized he needed to go all out to have any chance of beating him, so he decided then and there, no more games. Issei's reaction time was the only thing that made him able to dodge Thor's speed past him in his burst of speed. He noticed he was now covered in lightning. Issei quickly backflipped as Thor struck the ground with his hammer, making a good-sized crater in the process. Once he noticed his opponent escaped it, he pressed forwards yet again. On will, Issei's tail curled around him, shielding him from Thor's blows. He's fast and strong, and stubborn as well. That makes him very likely to keep charging in. Maybe I should play the waiting game and strike when the opportunity arises, Issei thought to himself. However, he couldn't just wait around. The more damage he took, the more likely Thor would be able to deal a good hit on him and follow it up. Fatigue was not an option, so he decided it was time to take it up a notch. Thor watched with his contemplation as Issei started to glow blood red. Suddenly, his primal features returned to their human state. It seemed he was going all out as partial transformation. Boosted gear, Thor heard suddenly. As he looked at the crimson-spiked gauntlet, he knew his opponent was going to start using everything he had in arsenal to defeat him. Boost! Thor quickly put his hammer up in a makeshift guard as Issei's fist met him. Though Thor knew Issei was stronger now than his partial form, he had the ability to use everything now, and the combo of his sacred gears made him a very lethal opponent to face. That's when he felt his legs get swept from under him as he started to fall back. Issei followed up with a diving in with his elbows forwards, landing it straight in the pit of his stomach. Boost! Issei quickly took that moment and grabbed Thor by his leg and started to spin him around crazily. Soon Thor was launched upwards, and he noticed a large amount of crimson energy forming at the tip of Issei's fingers. Dragon shot. Thor managed to block it with his hammer, but he knew Issei was just starting. That's when he noticed he didn't feel Loki's energy anymore. Even though they might not have really gotten along, it was still the fact that he was his brother, and that was something not to forget. Family was family until the end. As Issei saw Thor's expression darken, he knew he was mad now. Suddenly the sky darkened and the clouds was forming very quickly. Issei quickly dashed away as the lightning strike had landed where he was previously. More were coming as well. Issei decided to close their distance, extending his wings. He took off towards his target, weaving and dodging left and right as lightning strikes soared past him. Thor saw him closing in fast and met with a rock-hard punch in his gut that sent him crashing to the ground. As he was falling, he saw Issei raise his hand and a black orb of pure energy to start to form above his palm. As Issei threw it towards Thor, he was stupid enough to think he could block it. Raising his hammer, the sphere connected. A very violent reaction occurred, sending Thor, who was now covered in bruises and burns, sending him out of the forest. The group who currently were with Red was shocked at the explosion that could be seen. That's when they saw Thor crashing to the ground nearby. Before Issei was already there, waiting to strike again. As Thor got up yet again, it was obvious he wasn't done. This time, Thor chuckled a bit and looked at his opponent. "I have to give you props, kid. You have a killer hook, I'll admit it. And I might have lost this before it even started, but I'll say this, I'm not quitting until you put me 6 feet under," he said out loudly. Issei hesitated just a bit and looked at Thor with a deadly expression. "Then come at me with everything you got," he replied. Thor didn't even hesitate. Electricity started to crackle to life around him. He was using his full speed as he leapt at Issei, who managed to barely duck a mere inch or two as Thor crashed behind him. Issei quickly leapt into action, and everyone watched as Ascalon was being used now. Even if Thor wasn't a dragon, it was still a sword. A good few swings could give Issei a chance to finish it. Thor quickly leaned back to avoid one swipe from Issei, and then his hammer met the edge of the blade in the clash of strength. Issei suddenly pushed Thor backwards in an obvious statement. Before he knew it, Thor was kneed in the gut and slammed into the ground. Issei watched with awe as Thor climbed back up and didn't move towards him. However, he was looking very dangerously at Issei. It seemed that he was going to give it all his next attack. Suddenly, the clouds darkened quite a bit. This time, Thor had the electricity surging through him yet again, but this was more potent and concentrated. Issei quickly put up his guard as Thor started spinning his hammer around with powerful winds were sweeping through. Suddenly the hammer came flying towards Issei and creating a sonic boom in the process. Issei knew this one would hit. There is no doubt in his mind. He'd have to take it. That was faster than anything he could have predicted the god would use against him in this fight. So when he was knocked back by the impact of thrown weapon, he instantly felt it hit hard. As he landed on the ground and realized what happened, he noticed he couldn't lift a hammer. The reason you can't get it up off you is because you're not worthy, Issei heard faintly. As he peered at the battered god of thunder, something seemed to start to heat up. The tension was high and something had to snap. Issei started to lose sense of the world around him. His vision was blurry and his hearing was gone except for one thing, a low, gruntle growl from something ancient and primal. He realized it was Bahamut, and he knew the dragon wasn't thrilled. "Issei, it seems this god thinks we aren't capable. Consider this condition of your revival. Show this god your just what a true storm is, and don't spare any expense. He will see what we are capable of." His voice was harsh and bitter. That's when everyone else that was spectating saw a pulse of blood red energy erupt from Issei. It shocked them to their bones. The reason was it sounded like a heartbeat. Suddenly yet another pulse came, and this energy was potent and thick as the area was dyed in a dark bloody hue of Issei's aura. The expanse of it was definitely fitting. Thor didn't know what changed in the boy, but something was coming, something very big. Suddenly another pulse came out, and everyone wondered if this one was the last one, due to the fact its intensity was higher than the others combined. Suddenly, all the energy that was being released started to funnel back into Issei in large amounts. Soon, Issei was completely covered in all of the energy. It seemed to be peaking too, like it was a time bomb, about to obliterate everything in the vicinity to ashes. That's when they heard something they didn't expect, and partly didn't want to hear. Annihilation's descent. Balance breaker. That shocked everyone, even Issei. He was still in a trance-like state, so he wasn't really conscious of what was going on outside his mind and soul. However, those words snapped him just back a bit. With what he could manifest to keep him focused, he asked the proverbial question. "Bahamut, Annihilation's descent has activated the balance breaker." His response was quick. "Yes, my friend. I will train you later on how to use it to its fullest abilities. For now, just now use it to its purest form of my power. He will not stand a chance. Don't hold back, Issei. Your power is unmatchable. Let it be known to all who stand before you. Become the herald and let your voice shatter the heavens." Once it all came back, Issei looked down at the hammer that laid on his chest. His fury sufficed as he grabbed the handle of a fit of rage. Everyone looked at it in awe, fear and shock as he climbed out of a small crater he was in. Hammer in hand was looking very deadly at Thor. The armor definitely stapled fear in their bones as they got to look at it. The armor was a blend of pitch black that ended in spikes along the shoulder pads, with what looked like blood red veins coursing beneath them. "Did you really think that this toy would really hold me down forever?" Issei's voice cut in. Thor suddenly backed up in fear. It wasn't the fact he was able to hold the hammer or how his voice sounded. No, it was the surprised action that happened as Issei walked forward. His aura now seemed to defy all laws of physics, or just his concept of what it meant. However, what he was seeing was something like Devil's Zersek's power of destruction, how it was potent and near incomprehensible. This, though, was on another level altogether. This very ground he walked on disintegrated away, leaving tiny bits of craters behind him. The air around him wrapped and shifted as he made his way through. Thor knew anything he tried now wouldn't do anything. "You can take this back, but you can have it tenfold the power," Issei suddenly screamed. Suddenly the hammer was thrown at Thor as it felled him hip deep in the gut. He knew his time was coming, but he'd be damned if he didn't fight out till the end. A lightning strike was suddenly launched at Issei. He didn't seem fazed. The lightning didn't even hit him. His aura completely swallowed it whole, obliterating it before it came into contact with Issei. "What's going on?" Vali asked outside. She asked the Apocalypse Dragon, who had a pale face. She knew that he knew something was about this fearsome power. As he turned to her for once and spoke in a grave voice, she knew he was completely serious. "Only a few chosen had the right to see it, and for good reason. That is caught, it is such a lethal and dark ability. Bahamut's true power has financially surfaced in Issei, maybe with the push of the dragon himself to enable it. It is one of Bahamut's most powerful abilities. Take the power of a regular balance breaker with the speed and strength of boost of it, and add the power completely obliterate anything you touch into nothingness. This is only a small fraction of its power. His aura is now subconscious defense mechanism, allowing him to act without hesitation and no restraint. It will protect him at no order, no will, just pure subconscious power. That has one goal, one reason it was created, to completely annihilate anything in its path." His voice was definitely a reason to know it was the truth. It was shaky and his eyes told another story, like he witnessed it before, what power's potential was. The attention was grabbed as Issei suddenly appeared and reappeared before Thor's gleaming eyes. Thor tried to throw a punch, but was shocked to find it in his palm. However, it wasn't that made shock course through his veins, it was what happened when his fist connected. Issei's aura was eating at him, killing him slowly. His skin started to dry up and wither away from his hand. He reeled his hand back and looked at his opponent, who was looking at his fist in awe. Suddenly, Issei's eyes darkened as he raised his hand to the skies. "Behold, so-called God of Thunder, this is a true storm created by a true master of the skies," Issei roared. The skies darkened quickly. A massive cloud formed overhead. The rain poured insanely fast and black lightning was all around him, obliterating everything they struck. Thor didn't know what happened after that. Suddenly, he found himself lying on the ground, eating a fistful of dirt, and Issei was towering over him. "This is the end, punny god. You said you wouldn't stop until you're 6 feet under. Well, I'm gonna make that a reality," he whispered in his ear. It seemed Issei's speed was now unmatched as he seemed to teleport all over the battlefield, taking Thor with him at all while damaging him even more, to the point of the brink of death. Thor's time was coming and coming very soon. Once again, Issei vanished and appeared high above the air, while choking Thor in a deadly grasp. Thor couldn't speak now. Issei's power was already seeping through his throat, nullifying his vocal cords. "This is the end, Thor. You have gained a valiant effort. However, I'm not playing around. Goodbye, God of Thunder," was the last thing he said. Suddenly, Issei entered a trance-like state yet again, but this time he only rose a finger to the god's chest. "Obliterate." A tiny but powerful ray of black energy shot towards forwards, piercing Thor through the chest with no effort, just like a bullet. Thor's eyes dropped to the ground, gaping hole in his chest. He could feel the energy attacking everything in his body. Issei let go and watched as his opponent wither away as he fell to the ground. Not a single trace of the god's body or energy left. Chapter 26, Horizon, Part 1. To the others, the aftermath of the battle with Loki and Thor made the battleground look like a wasteland. Only a few trees were left standing. "Is it over?" Vali asked. Only Great Red spoke. "I'm afraid it's only begun. Once they realize that Thor and Loki have failed to return, they will come full force. The time has come to realize that the war is at our front door." Vali was about to speak, but footsteps were heard, and everyone turned their attention to Issei. He had already dropped out of his new balance breaker and was in base form. "What the hell was that, Issei?" Issei looked at Rainier and sighed. "I'm sorry if I scared you, but it seems this power will be the weight to the I'm sorry if I scared you, but it seems this power will be the weight to tip the balance in our favor." Issei looked at everyone and started to speak. This is the tipping point of our whole situation. Prepare for the hardest battles to come. Everyone seemed confident in their individual abilities, and Issei saw it clearly. His willpower had rubbed off on them. He was about to continue, but started to feel dizzy and nausea coming. However, that didn't make sense. He shouldn't get sick. He was a fucking dragon god now. An illness was a bug waiting to be squashed by him. You aren't sick, Issei hyoudou. His eyes widened. Bahamut? Drake? Did you guys hear that? The response wasn't what he was expecting. I heard nothing. Issei, are you okay? Did the balance breaker cause too much fatigue? Bahamut seemed to agree with Drake. Your dragons cannot hear me. This is a temporary connection between just the two of us. I have made it that way so you could only focus solely on me. Now take a deep breath and listen to what I have to say. Issei relented and did the mysterious voice asked him to do. Good. Now I'm going to sever the connection between you and the dragons inside you for a small bit so that we don't get off track here. Issei waited for the voice to continue. He wasn't about to interrupt it. Whoever it was clearly not going to take no for an answer. If he could sever the link between him and the dragons that reside in his soul, the entity was very powerful indeed. I don't have much time with you, so I'll have to go as fast as possible. You sparked my interest that night in hell when you accepted Bahamut with open arms. Only a fool or those with tempered wills of steel would do that. You are the latter, and as such I watched you in your journey to see what fruit it would bear. It seems you are the one to change the world. I have no ill will for what you are doing, even if I don't agree on every level of your plan. However, that doesn't dispute the fact that the land of fate was tempered and it will respond in kind. I knew at the moment I felt the energy you unleashed in the battle with Great Red. You, Issei hyoudou, have been chosen to stop the end of the world. Issei was at a loss, so he just let the entity continue. In the incoming days of your war, an opponent you know all too well will appear before you. Though they are not the cause, it is the people they have in their group that will plot behind their backs and try to achieve world domination, but will ultimately bring about the apocalypse. Issei was now annoyed. Enough of these riddles. What will happen and who are you? He heard a slight chuckle. It seems your reputation is true. You are stubborn and bullheaded. However, that is not what will drive you to victory. For your question, I must answer it now. Due to the fact this will be the last time you hear from me, the apocalypse will be brought on your group that is in the Chaos Brigade. Their wish is to resurrect the beast I sealed away. Don't worry, even if I can't help you physically, there is someone who will help you in your time of need. Issei was about to ask who he was, but then it hit him. He said the beast he sealed away. That only meant one thing. Issei just talked with God and was told he would save the world after nearly destroying the factions. Talk about irony. The God of the Bible wasn't totally mad about his raging war that was about to peak. The second part about someone else helping begged the question, who was it? His train of thought was interrupted as he focused his attention on the group. Okay, here's what we will do. I want Volley, Byoko, Kalawarner, Rainier, and Donoseek to focus on the minions that will be coming along with everyone else. I don't know who all to expect. We will have to see when they arrive. Kuroka, Paimon, Li Fei, Arthur, and Kokaville will face off against the Satans with my help. Great Red will handle Orphis, and we have our allies who will come to our aid when I call them. Let nothing stand in our way. This moment will go down in history forever. Okay. Then how long do you think we have? Issei looked at Volley. It will take a bit for the word to spread so they can mobilize. A few hours, I bet. Issei then dismissed everyone and started to think. He had no idea what was going to happen and how this was going to plan out. He knew that he wouldn't give up, though. That was obvious. It was time to get answers that he wanted. Before he knew it, he was sitting down, meditating easily. He awoke to a barren world. The city he walked through seemed to have been destroyed. Skyscrapers with broken glass adorned the skyline. Issei was headed towards the direction he would be forever changed. A storm brewed ahead. He looked at it for a brief moment, but continued anyways. As he peered down the edge of the cliff into the cave, he knew this was where he needed to be. Before he knew it, he found himself in a cavern that had smooth black walls. He wondered what would be further down. With no choice, he started again. This time, the cave took a 90-degree turn as Issei found himself staring at a pitch-black hole with no bottom in sight. Issei then had an idea. A fireball formed in his hand, and he threw it down there. The fireball seemed to go insanely far for a long time before exploding as it collided with the floor. Issei shrugged and jumped down it. Using his wings, he easily softened his descent. However, the moment he touched the ground, he was met with a long river of lava that stretched beyond his eyes. With no choice, he sped towards the end of what was met with another elevation. The river seemed to drop into a crater of a volcano. However, something was wrong. This crater was too big to be a normal one. His eyes widened as he stepped foot in a super volcano. There was thousands of floating rocks that Issei could see as he peered into the distance. He should have guessed that it would be something like that for Bahamut to reside in. As soon as he stood in the center, that was when he heard the distant roar. Then he heard the wings of the beast, as the dragon himself floated above him for a moment before descending on top of a rock. It is a rare moment for you to come to me directly. Speak, and don't waste any words. The look on Issei's face was clearly enough to tell the dragon that he was serious. I want you to teach me about this new power, and the one I used to fight with Thor. Bahamut didn't hesitate and answered Issei. This power you have, Issei, it is more than you think. Your potential is insane, and even more so with this. The power itself manifests its will or desires and feeds off your willpower. Give it a reason to show its power, and it will. But don't be fooled. This power will tempt you. Try to sway your views, but will respond in kind to your ability to resist and reject it. Your potential is malleable as such in this power. It's all up to you. I will teach you how to use the basics, but you must grow on your own. Issei stared at him. So where do we start? Issei thought what he looked like to be a smirk on the dragon's face. He didn't know it was coming, as the towering beast above him didn't reply. Issei's eyes widened as a pitch black and bloody red aura covered Bahamut. Suddenly the dragon was transforming. Issei looked in a stupor as he was now staring at him in human form. His human form was strange. He was looking at a man who looked to be about 60 years old. With jagged black hair, he had a cane too. However, his cane was something on a completely different level. The obsidian skull with ruby eyes that his hand touched definitely told Issei something was amiss. The rest of the cane was obsidian as well. Don't look surprised. You should be honored. This form has only been seen by a few beings. There's a good reason I use it, and you will see soon. We are going to start your training. Issei didn't know what to expect. What will we be doing? A mock battle. It's finally time you show me what you can do and how you adapt. Don't worry, it will not be fatal. Only I will see truly how far you can improve. Issei sighed. It's not like I have a choice, so let's do this. Bahamut nodded and raised his cane, and a violent energy covered the cane. Issei was suddenly on his guard as he felt the pressure start to increase. On pure instinct, he ducked under a bolt of explosive energy that created a sonic boom. He had barely any amount of time to react to his opponent was pressing him hard. One by one, hundreds of bolts were shot out, with no sight of the end of the onslaught. He soon took flight, but to no avail. These bolts were still coming at him. Circling ahead, he dived down towards and turned around and chucked the destructive sphere at the projectiles. He managed to destroy them, but the blast knocked him backwards. He had no time to think of what it shot towards him. With no hesitation, slammed his fist that was covered in scales on the rock he was standing on. The rock started to surf on the lava heading for the attack, and Issei waited. Once the bolts were close enough, he leaped overhead and watched them collide with the rock. His target was now in sight, and the distance was closed. Ascalon met the shaft of his cane, and it was a stalemate. Issei was surprised. The cane was glowing violently with purple and black now. Bahamut started to push back on him. Issei didn't give up though. With no restraint, he pushed back with all he had. Bahamut felt his rise in power and responded in kind. The stalemate continued with the amount of energy they are using. Something had to give, and both of them knew that. The resulting explosion knocked both of them back, but neither were done yet. Several explosions rocked the area as it went all again. They both weren't running out of steam either. Issei knew Bahamut was just toying with him. He knew this battle would be something else. Bahamut was just up in a flash, and so was Issei. This is the first time and the last time I will warn you, Issei. Don't hold back. We both know this battle is going to be on what you've done before, so do not take me lightly. Like I said, it's non-fatal. We are also in your mind, so the damage will not be permanent. Come at me with all you have. Issei heard Bahamut's statement and grinned. When Bahamut saw the airy grin, he knew that the spark had just come to life. This flight would be interesting. Due to the fact that he saw something in Issei's eyes, it made him proud and ton of respect for the man before him. It seemed it was right. The power of Issei used on Thor had already taken a liking to him. There was no doubt in his mind. He could feel the energy growing steadily. Slowly, but that didn't matter. It would only take Issei powering up for a fight that then he knew what he would do. He was going to give Issei a small push, but a push that would have an astounding effects. This battle would push Issei in the power. The battle would push Issei, and the power would respond like a fire doused in gasoline. He would shatter his limits and evolve his power in such a way that would be unique to only him. His attention snapped back to his opponent as he saw the red energy coat him. Boosted gear. Bahamut's guard was on his boosted gear and charged at him. Issei's fish met air as Bahamut easily crouched to avoid it, then proceeded to block a kick right after. He then took the opportunity and elbowed Issei in the gut, knocking him to the ground. Boost! Issei was already back on his feet and coming at him again. Then this time, Issei threw a punch after punch was still to no avail. He then decided then and there, no more games, he was done for. Bahamut instinctively leaped back as Issei started to gather a ton of crimson energy. He knew with Drake's balance breaker that Issei would be a lot stronger and faster combined with his own physical strength. He would do much better and maybe even be able to get a hit on him. Once he used his balance breaker, that's when the fight would be truly staged. Welt's Dragon Annihilation Balance Breaker. Issei wasted no time. As he charged at his target, his fist met Bahamut's palm. Issei quickly grabbed Bahamut's arm and yanked him and threw him. Dragon Fist. The beam of red energy did a bit to Bahamut, but he easily got back up. Bahamut didn't move though, and that was surprised. Issei was. He knew something was coming. Suddenly, a large amount of energy started to gather around him. Before he knew it, Issei was looking at Bahamut in partial dragon form. The cane disappeared and he now had a bigger build. His wings were large too. However, Issei knew this form would exile in close combat. Bahamut charged as his opponent started to boost over and over again, and clash endured. Blow after blow was landed again and again on both of them. It seemed neither of them were giving up as they continued to trade blows. Issei started to charge up a destructive blast of energy. Bahamut knew this was nothing compared to what his balance breaker would do, but it would still power Issei up even more. Issei decided to slam it on a nearby rock, causing a wave of lava to rise and surge forwards. Bahamut leaped overhead, which was what Issei wanted. This time, he shot off a quick blast that soared towards the dragon. Bahamut put his guard up just in time he was hit. Bahamut was surprised as Issei suddenly dropped out of his balance breaker. He wondered what his opponent was up to. Issei started to change into his dragon form, and he soon took to the skies as well. Bahamut grinned. Both of them started throwing kicks and punches left and right. Issei got the drop on Bahamut as he wrapped his tail around him and threw him down towards the crater. He watched as he crashed into a rock and was sent under the lava. He knew Bahamut was fine, and his suspicion was proved true as the dragon burst out his sword towards him. Issei blocked a kick, then leaned as his fist soared just above his head. Issei saw the opening and delivered an elbow to his ribs, then followed it up with a kick on the other side that sent Bahamut flying. The dragon wasn't done yet, though. Issei knew this wasn't going to be over for a while. Bahamut started to gather an enormous amount of energy and it was absorbed into his body. Issei knew Bahamut just made himself a lot stronger. He watched as a black and purple energy covered his fist and Issei suddenly felt the gut-wrenching blow. He didn't know what happened. One moment of energy was just starting to coat the fist, and in a blink of an eye, Bahamut delivered the blow. That was pretty much instantaneous. Issei knew there was no point anymore. As he got back up, he returned to his human form. His mind was set. It was time. Bahamut was going to get what he wanted. There was really no use in using his dragon form. Sure, it was stronger than Drake's balance breaker. However, Issei knew that Bahamut was too powerful now for it. He had no choice but to use his other balance breaker. That's when Bahamut got a large toothy grin on his face. He sensed it. Issei was calling on it. It was time to see the next instance of the power would show. He wondered just how far Issei could go with his potential as it was now. That's when the explosion of energy happened. Bahamut knew it was coming. As Bahamut witnessed the most powerful aura coming off Issei, he knew his thoughts would be proven true. Issei, on the other hand, felt a little bit different. The power significantly felt weaker than last time he used it. Maybe Bahamut said was true, so then it was a test. He shook off his thoughts and focused on his opponent. Bahamut saw the change in the expression and his guard was up. As Issei charged, Bahamut did the same. Issei was exerting a ton of pressure on every blow that Bahamut blocked. As Issei threw another punch, his opponent ducked just in time, delivering a powerful uppercut. Issei was sent skidding back. Bahamut blocked several more before Issei decided to step it up. Bahamut didn't seem to notice a small orb of energy in his hands and it was slammed into his ribs. The explosion sent him flying into the air. However, Dragon gained control over himself and started to hover in the air again. Issei felt the dread well up inside of him as Bahamut started to gather a ton of energy in his palm before condensing it. That made his eyes fly open as a small orb of energy in his dragon's hands was extremely volatile. He knew it was unstable and it would make the human's nuclear bomb look like a firecracker. Suddenly, Bahamut seemed to teleport right in front of him again, but didn't do anything. It was then he started to speak. "Tell me, Issei, "What will you do if you fail?" Issei didn't respond, but Bahamut knew it would work. The look in his eyes told him that it was a flame that was lit, and it was one that would not be extinguished. Issei didn't understand it really. He wondered why he would be asked that. He knew Bahamut had an ulterior motive to ask. Fail at what? Fail at this battle? Fail at my goal? Wait. Something kicked in his head, and his eyes darkened in the mere thought of what would happen if he failed. He felt his blood boil. He knew what Bahamut was getting at. However, he was pissed. He didn't like anyone toying with his emotions. He wouldn't hold it against him, but a little payback he would get. Bahamut realized he just snapped the locks and kept the cage closed. He backed up quickly as the energy around Issei started to react violently. He wasn't expecting this at all. As the raging torrent of energy sailed high above them, he knew this was going to be the end of it. Suddenly, all the energy started to swirl around Issei as he gained control over his temper, and Bahamut was met face to face with a monster with a hardened stare. As Issei lifted his hands, the energy seemed to flow like water, taking a shape of whatever he willed it to be. A spear that was black in the night formed in his palm, and with a swift throw it soared at his opponent. Bahamut barely had time to dodge, and he didn't even get away unscathed. The spear just clipped him on the ribs, taking a little bit of flesh off. It was only due to the fact that who he was, that energy was not eating him alive. Issei continued on and gave no mercy. Bahamut was set flying when 3 spears had pierced him out of nowhere. Suddenly, Issei seemed to vanish from his view, as he felt the crushing knee that was delivered right to his back. Issei wasn't done. He instantly grabbed the dragon and launched him high into the air, and then raised his hand. Several dark orbs were fired off in quick succession. Bahamut felt all of them as they collided with each other, only increasing the damage that the blast would do. Issei decided it was time to finish it. Yet again, he appeared above the dragon and smashed him down towards with an axe kick. He then took from his opponent's book and summoned yet another energy blast, and condensed it, and didn't stop until it was barely visible. With barely any effort, he threw it towards the falling dragon, and flew away as the resulting explosion was definitely stronger than anything he'd seen. He knew this war was going to be a walk in the park. He didn't give a damn. He would destroy anyone in his way. Chapter 27. Horizon, Part 2. As Issei came out of his mind, he was still feeling the anger coursing through his veins. He needed to calm down his temper, or he would be blind. That would prove to be a fatal mistake on his part. The others looked at him as he sat down and started to breathe deeply. They knew he was going through something, so they knew not to press him about the issue. Time would help him, so they just had to wait. However, there were more pressing matters at hand. The war was about to begin, and they couldn't have their leader out of commission. So they were going to say fuck it and turn it around. Then and there. However, none of them wanted to tempt the beast as it reaped the consequences. It was Kuroko who walked forward despite the risk and decided that she was going to get him to talk about what was on his mind. However, what she didn't know is that Issei, she knew she was coming and was preparing for the conversation, acting with no haste. He severed the link with the dragon so that he wouldn't be distracted and could focus. That's when he heard, "Issei, tell me, what's wrong?" She heard a sigh come out and waited. I had a talk with Bahamut, and I know he was only trying to help, but he was toying with my emotions. He heard a response pretty quickly. What did he say? As Issei started to tell her, he noticed her expression was of empathy. When she spoke, his entire being was shaken up. He was flabbergasted and left with no words, with the only thought was to protect everyone. Well, I can definitely say that wasn't intentional, Issei. He was testing to see if your will had faltered. What do I have to say about it? Sure, failure is a possibility, but possibilities are endless, and they are just that. Only possibilities. What truly matters is what to take to heart and how yourself will change the future by your own hands. Issei didn't know what to think. He knew that was every word she said was true. He couldn't dwell on it. His team needed him. With a swift motion, Kuroko found herself in a tight grip and 2 words were whispered in her ear. Thank you. There was no time to waste. Issei had a gut feeling that the war would be full-blown in a few hours, so it was time to brief everyone. As he got everyone's attention, he spoke. Everyone, the time is now. Something tells me that today the war will truly begin, so there is no going back. We'll fight till our dying breaths. No matter how the odds, we will prevail. Nothing will ever stand in our way. Are you with me? The response that he got was expected. The deafening roar of support rang through the underworld. Anyone would be able to hear it. He knew they were ready. It was a little bit later, and everyone had rested up to regain their strength that started from training sessions they were doing. That's when everyone felt it. A massive energy spike was sensed, and everyone knew the armies were mobilized and ready to fight, but so were they. Issei motioned for everyone to stay still. They would need their prey to come to them, not the other way around. It was time. Before they knew it, they were face to face with 4 Satans and their army of devils. Issei couldn't count the number of soldiers on the battlefield. He knew he wouldn't hit the mark as it falls short of the actual number. He didn't see Grafia though, which made him wonder. His realization came right after. Listen up. Leave Sir Zex alive. I'm going to extract some very useful information from him. Issei's attention was back on the army in front of him. They were cannon fodder, just meant to be a decoy to wear his team down, so he needed a plan. He couldn't, however, wipe out every single one with a single blast. No, that would be a waste of energy, and he knew the endurance would be key to winning. His fight would be with Orphis. Her power was infinite, so he had to wipe her out with full power, so that she couldn't come back for anything. His eyes focused on Sir Zex. He wondered how he was in any shape to fight. But he was here and ready to fight. That didn't bother Issei. All of his efforts would be in vain. Issei suddenly felt dizzy and fell on one knee. His team looked at him with worry. They tried talking to him, but it didn't seem he could hear them at all. The Satans saw this and knew it was an opportunity. With one finger, the army was sent forwards, with Satans leading. Red didn't hesitate and started to bark orders. They needed to buy time. He didn't know exactly what was going on with Issei, but he had an idea. Just before an army had shown up, he had sensed a presence, but he couldn't make it out. He didn't think that Issei had sensed it, for whatever it was deliberately hid itself very well. Red only felt a sample of it before it vanished into the thin air. Before the army could get any closer, they stopped as they saw Great Red with himself in all his glory. Staring down at them in his dragon state, at full power, he was ready to lay waste to them. He suddenly launched a massive assault on the army in front of him. It was pandemonium among the devils. They were going to get slaughtered, and they knew it too. However, before he could do anything else, the temper dropped several degrees into the negatives. Everyone looked around but couldn't find the source, but their eyes turned to Issei, who was standing up, but he was still. The only thing he was doing was holding out his hand as he was waiting for something to come to it. That's when everyone felt it. The winds were blowing harshly, and they heard a high-pitched whistle. Whatever the object that was soaring through the air, it was coming very fast, and it was headed for Issei. He didn't seem to be bothered by it either. No, it was like he knew it was coming. That's when the whistle got louder, and the moment the truth was upon them, they couldn't make out the object since it was moving so fast, and their focus was lost as a sonic boom was heard as it traveled ahead of them. Suddenly they heard a grunt, what seemed to be a ground being kicked up as Issei started skidding backwards. When the dust finally cleared, they got a good look at what he was holding. Most of his team didn't know what it was for, but they used what it was, a staff. However, Red and the Satans stared at it like they knew exactly what it was. Red was in awe. He couldn't believe that Issei was holding that thing. He knew the tides would be changed greatly with it. The Satans stared at it in fear. They knew exactly what it was and what it could do. Flashback. Issei suddenly felt dizzy and fell on one knee. His team looked at him with worry. They tried talking to him, but it seemed they couldn't hear him at all. He tried talking to his dragons, but he got no response. Someone had severed the link, and Issei knew once again that he had no choice but to wait and listen. It seems the time has come, Issei hyoudou. The voice seemed familiar, but he couldn't figure out who it was exactly. Who are you? He chuckled, and then hit with a response. You already know who I am. You just need the memory jogged a bit. That's when the images into his head battle that he remembered it all too well. Issei took a deep breath as he realized who invaded his mind. To who do I owe the pleasure of speaking to you, Hades? Another chuckle was heard. Nothing of major importance. In fact, I'm solely here to help you in your endeavor against the factions. What's the catch? No catch. I'm only here to help, and expecting nothing in return. I don't have much time, so I will get on with it. You are the very beginning of the war. And even though you are strong enough to handle the small fry, you know very well that the endurance is key to winning this. I hate to say it, but you have more powerful foes to face than Orphis in the oncoming days, not to the Triaxa. Then how are you going to help me? I will give you my blessing, and a gift. Both will be needed. Only my blessing will you be able to hold this gift, but heed my warning. Temper. You will even more, and then the gift will respond. If you don't, it will consume your very soul. You will know what to do when the time comes. And just like that, the conversation was no more. The flashback ended. As Issei took in his surroundings, his mind was set. He turned the staff, was held in his hand. It had 3 blue eyes and along with 2 horns on the top of it. That's when he felt it. The weapon was trying to sap his energy. He wasn't going to let that happen though. Soon enough, he got it under control and felt something else. Even though he couldn't hear it, the staff wanted to plunge him into the ground. Everyone was waiting for him to move to be made, and a move was going to be made. However, Issei being who he decided to sound out a warning, his voice amplified to everyone who could hear it. Soldiers of Satans. You have been deceived into thinking you can win this war. However, the truth is you are horribly outmatched. Leave now and no harm will fall on you. If you choose to stay and fight, then this place will be your grave. His warning wasn't heard, as it seemed none of them laid down their weapons, so with his mindset, he knew what he had to do. The Saiyans watched in fear as Issei jumped into the air, as they coming down fiercely with the base of the staff aimed at the ground. When the staff was finally embedded to the ground, a massive ravine opened up and everyone saw tons of Grim Reapers come out of the ground. It was far too many to count. When everything settled, they were staring at a legion of Grim Reapers. However, they weren't moving, except for 2 of them. They were walking towards Issei with intent. When they finally came to stop, one spoke with a raspy voice. To summon us and the Legion, you must have gained Hades' favor. What do you ask of us? Issei looked and figured and responded. What is your name? The figure looked odd at Issei asking, but replied. Thanatos, at your service. And may I ask, who am I serving? Issei chuckled. Issei Hyoudou. As for my request, you are in the middle of a war. I only have you to take care of the Satan's armies and other armies who will arrive soon. That is when Thanatos turned around and saw it for himself. I see. Then it will be our pleasure, Issei. With one swift motion, Thanatos rised, and his hand commanded the Legion to attack, and attack they did. Red watched in awe as every single Grim Reaper took arms and charged with the army of devils. The Satans knew this was going to be the next great war. Red, you're with me. The rest of you team up on Satan and waste no breath. Today is the day. The future is now and forever changed. Let me feel your power, your demonstration, and take no prisoners. Everyone roared and charged. It was official. The war had begun. Seraphil found herself face to face with Issei, with Red facing Alika. The rest were teamed up against Fibema and Sirzex. Alajuka looked at the more powerful being that stood before him, knowing this wouldn't be an easy fight. Before he could ever even gather his thoughts, his opponent was charging at him, wasting no time. Red fired off an energy beam. However, Ajuka just summoned a portal and redirected the attack back at the dragon. Red paid no mind, though easily he deflected his own attack. That's when Red realized the ranged battle wouldn't work. No, it was time to hammer his opponent into the ground. Appearing behind him, Red delivered a powerful punch that sent the devil flying. He knew Ajuka wasn't done though, and his suspension was proved when the devil stood back up. This time, an energy blast was fired his way, though just before it, Red, a portal opened up and redirected the attack away from him. That's when Red decided to take it to the next level. Ajuka didn't know what happened. One moment he started staring at his opponent, then he lurked forward, gasping for air. That's when he felt the hand close around his wrist. We're going somewhere. You can't run around like a headless chicken. There will be no escaping me. Everyone watched as the portal closed around the 2 of them, and they teleported into the dimensional gap. That's when they all started to break loose. That's when all hell started to break loose, and everyone knew there was going to be a ton of bloodshed. Seraphil looked at her opponent. She knew it was futile and hopeless. Their armies were now going to be decimated by the Legion of Reapers that Issei summoned. However, she wasn't going to stand down and do nothing. Boosted gear! She gritted her teeth as she heard that, so it was time. Issei easily blocked a blow from her and retaliated with a dragon shot straight to her abdomen, which sent her flying backwards. However, Issei wasn't done. He quickly appeared right behind her and used another dragon shot aimed at her back. He easily jumped out of the way of the ice spear came soaring at him. Issei smirked. It seemed she had a bit of fire in her. It was time to douse that fire. He jumped yet again as another spear soared past him. She couldn't kill him and she knew it. She decided it was time for a last-ditch effort. Issei wondered what she was planning, as a ton of energy was being focused around with a single motion. A large ice sphere was rocketed towards him. Issei only put his hand, and everyone watched as a large mass of destruction started to overpower her ice sphere and send both of them back at her with blinding speeds. She couldn't avoid it, and damage was done. So the damage was done. The resulting explosion knocked her back high into the air, which Issei took that moment and vanished and reappeared above her. She barely had any time to reenact as she started his foot slam on her back, sending her crashing down to the ground. She got back up but was severely wounded. She couldn't do much at all. Her armor was starting to fall off as Issei knew it would be time to make an example out of her. Appearing right in front of her, she found his hand wrapped around her throat, crushing it with a ton of pressure. With fear in her eyes, he said something. You should have known this would happen, Seraphil. Now you will pay the ultimate price. He turned to his enemies and shouted, This is your fate. None of you will leave here alive. Let me be the reminder of how bad you fucked up. The Satans wretched in horror as the life drained from her, and they heard the unmistakable, undeniable sound of the neck snapping. the sound of a large thud as he threw her lifeless body on the ground. She wasn't going to get up ever again. Sir Zex realized that he had to do something. There were 2 of them left against overwhelming odds. With a swift motion, a beacon was deployed. Suddenly, everyone felt the signature energy transportation circles being formed. Before they knew it, the Greek pantheon, Orpheus, and the evil dragons along with the whole Chaos Brigade were now on the field. Issei realized this was the moment of truth. Issei was pulled out of his train of thought when Bahamut spoke. Sure, he had been a little pissed. However, at a time like this, any advice was there. Let me ask you this. What is the one things that dragons respect the most? Issei didn't know where this was going, so he let Bahamut continue. Power. It has always been just that. This will help you greatly. Those evil dragons can be swayed. Show them that Orpheus is an ant to you, and they will follow you like moths to the flame. Go into your full dragon state and roar with everything you have. It will be near impossible for them to resist you. Issei pondered on that moment but decided it was worth a shot. As he started to transform, everyone stared at him, wondering what he was about to do. Before their only eyes, Issei had fully transformed into a true dragon. That's when they heard the defying roar that made even Red wince its commanding power. Orpheus watched in horror as all the evil dragons she was in control of started to wince and shake. She knew what Issei was doing. One by one, every single evil dragon switched sides as they knew Issei's full power was unmatched. However, Issei roaring like that caused some more attention. Issei felt another energy pulse as 4 more transportation circuits arrived on the field. Looking around, he saw Yakuza and the Shino Trinity right by them. It seemed the time has come, and as part of our agreement, we are here, Issei hyoudou. Issei nodded and thanked Yakuza. His eyes then focused on Azazel and his legion of fallen angels, along with Seraphis and their brave saints. However, the duo his eyes landed on gave him a bit of worry. However, that worry was squashed as he realized they were not a threat. He knew he couldn't beat them in his base form. If he was at his full power, they wouldn't stand a chance. His determination only solidified as he started at Shiva and Indra. It was truly a sight to see. A war that would go down in history was going to unfold in front of them. A war they would win. And that is all the author had to write. Now, I don't know if I'll continue the story for myself because I honestly don't have any fucking time to do it, if I'm being quite frank. And I might put a little bit of bloopers at the end of me just fucking up in general, but who knows. But yes, that is all that the story has to offer. So if you guys want to see another series of me narrating, because a lot of people seem to like it, just tell me what kind of series you want down in the description below. I know a person has already done What If Great Red was, or What If Issei was the son of Great Red, but if you guys want me to narrate that instead of hearing a robot voice, I'm completely okay with that. So, thank you for all the support that truly has gone into this series. I mean, shit, I gained like fucking 6,000 subscribers, and that's absolutely amazing. So thank you for all the support once again. Without further ado, Spartanic out.